Just right.
And so we're all being recorded now. And I just want to say thank you guys for making it to the final session, and congratulate you for getting to this point. I know James and I are happy that we made it to this point also. So just a quick look at what we're going to be doing in class today. So we're going to go over any questions or comments or anything that you'd like to discuss that we haven't covered so far. And then we're going to go into sharing your digital stories. A couple of you have sent them to me and James, or to Janelle, and she shared them with us. But hopefully others of you have your stories that you can share with us. I know I got a question over the weekend or yesterday. So hopefully we'll get to see her story as well. And then James and I are going to share a couple of applications or apps and programs that we use when we're editing our digital stories to share on social media, YouTube, or actually any of our social profiles, or anywhere that we are wanting to get our stories out there. And so let's go ahead and stopping the screen share. And I just want to open it up to any questions that any of you guys might have about any of the material that we've covered so far. Like maybe you need some tips or ideas on how to put together your stories, or maybe the stuff that we're covering later on about the different applications is exactly what you were hoping for, so your question's going to be answered. But anything. You can unmute yourself and just ask away. That's the only slide I have for you guys today. So,
You guys have any questions about creating them? Go ahead.
I think like Davy Jo is so like she's able to use the cell phone really well and can navigate and move things around and do cool things with pictures or video, but and maybe it's my age, but I'm thinking like, are there like how-tos? Is that something that you can just YouTube? And then also I do have the list for adding the music, but yeah, as far as creating the storyboard, and I think the iMovie had that. But yeah, just maybe some best practices.
yes. So James, do you have any comments to start with?
Oh no, I'll jump off you.
Okay.
I've got a little bit, but I want to see if you'll cover it.
As far as creating our storyboards, what I typically do, and again, I'm just now venturing into video again. But when I used to shoot video for the boat, what I did is I had a pre-made, and Janelle called it a storyboard, which is exactly what it is, where I shot a beginning, and every beginning I had a very similar type of beginning, and then I shot a middle, and then I would do underwater stuff on the boat. So I had a very structured system to how I would shoot. And what that helped me to do, so let's say I'm going to do a video on how to make a cake, or how to bake cookies, or how to cook something. Now, the first thing that I would probably do is like, okay, first you have to figure out what you're baking. And then second, you have to figure out where you're going to shoot your video. How much content do you want to share? Because if you're going to go from start to end, if you've ever baked anything, you know that can be a really long process, especially if you're making something like a cheesecake. That's going to be a multiple hour video just to if you go from measuring out the ingredients to mixing them, to then putting them in the springform pan, to then putting them in the water bath, to cooking it. So that's going to be a really long video. Are my viewers going to sit through that whole video? So these are the kinds of questions and processes that I go through when I'm coming up with ideas on how I'm going to compose something. So then what I do is I'll create a storyboard, whether it's in my mind because it's something that I do often enough, or it's just, or I will write it out. And I'll have in my mind, okay, I know I want to do a shot of the ingredients. Do I need to have video of me measuring every single thing out? There might be some ingredients, like when I'm measuring the any of the like shortening or butters, I might want to demonstrate how I get the bubbles out or something like that. So, but for the rest of it, it might be just a group shot, and then I show, and when I measure the butter, this is what I do, so that the air bubbles come out so we get exact measurements. Or I might share the fact that I don't really use measuring cups. For baking, I use a scale to weigh my ingredients. So, and then, but that would be an interesting thing to share with people, that they'd be like, oh, I didn't know that that was something that you could do. And then maybe go into how to mix it, and then just show putting it in the oven, and then of course taking it out, and then presentation. So we want to make sure that when we're telling a story, we're telling it in a way that's capturing our audience, and we're not losing them. And you know, so oftentimes we can do that just shooting from the hip, but sometimes it works to just create a plan. It's like delivering a speech in class when we have to get up and tell a story. Every time we hear, if I start to say, okay, well, there's this one time when I was gonna bake a cheesecake, and I start talking really slow, and you just hear me like thinking my thoughts the whole time, and the filler words is and so, and you know, something like that. And you know, that we don't really tell the story, we're thinking it in our minds. So that's where having that story, that format of writing out a plan, and most of all, having the overall message that we want to deliver in our story. What is the purpose of this video? What is the purpose of my telling and sharing this video or this digital story with people? And so yes, there's definitely a process, whether it's writing it out, or if you have all the time in the world to just do a whole bunch of different cuts and takes and shoot, and then you have all the time to edit. Because as James and I have experienced in a project that we're working on right now, that having more footage isn't necessarily the best option. Sometimes having less and having those clear objectives on what we're going in to capture right now. Right now we want these types of images or these types of shots. And that's something that we would have saw in our minds from the beginning. So I don't know, that was a really longer than I expected to give answer. Did that answer your question, Janelle? And then James?
Yeah, no,
I've got
that
something
helps,
well.
because as far as, you know, with preparation and thinking of the process and what they can relate it to, is helpful. And I'm still guilty of that, because you're a lot of times you're shooting from the hip, you're trying to think of what to say, and you're like, maybe I'll go this way with this thought or that way. But if you have a clear idea of the message you want to deliver, and if it's important, and then you find a way to deliver that message or tell that story. So, but yeah, no, I get lost in my in my thoughts or my translation. I guess that's a old movie, isn't it? Lost in Translation.
Yep.
But yeah, no, that helps out. But you know, just some tools, and just how they can prepare, and I'll have to do a debrief with you guys at the end, as far as like, you know, what are some cool tools that we can have for this, and to where the participants can create an awesome story. So
yes,
that was really helpful. Thanks.
Awesome. Yay.
Right on. I'll continue with as far as my storytelling capabilities go. When I think of music, when I think of art, when I think of culture, when I think of, you know, I loved movies growing up as a little boy, and so I always see things like cinematic. I see scenes in my head when I'm hearing a music song or something like that. So here's how I create. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Like that. Okay. So can you guys see my screen? I write down my shot list, right? So the reason I even started doing it this way was I watched this video right here. I'll go ahead and highlight that and I'll drop it in the chat so everybody's got it in Zoom after this is over. But so I follow a film director from Hollywood called Ben Alex Dupree. So I follow his YouTube. And an interesting thing about his YouTube is he adds in like a little section in his page that is like a playlist of videos that for professional content. So I've gotten to the point in my career, in whether it's music videos, film, promo videos and whatnot, that, you know, I started creating stories myself just by telling pictures and stories behind those pictures. And now it's morphed into film that, you know, I'm doing things at more of professional caliber, high-end caliber stuff. So I want to make sure that I'm prepared. When I go into telling a story, I want to make sure that I'm honoring the time of the artists. I'm honoring the time of myself. I'm honoring the time. Let's say I'm going out and I'm shooting the video and whatnot, but I've got Roxanne and Omac that's going to be editing all that video. So I want to try to come in prepared and give her some tight, concise pieces so that she can build the story in the editing process. And by doing so, I start out by writing it out like as I would. I'm closing my eyes and I'm envisioning this song of mine, right? So I'm like, okay, location one, I want it to be daytime in front of my house, you know, and in my mind, when I'm closing my eyes and I'm picturing this front door of my house, it's a sunny day. I'm imagining the birds chirping and stuff like that. And then so now I'm going to set the scene of where the camera needs to be. So let's say I'm not the one shooting this. I'm giving direction as a director to the person with the camera, with all the skills. Let's say I don't have skills as a cameraman, but I got the vision. You know, I want to share this and write it down so that we're all on the same page. This is useful for anybody that's on your team, anybody that's going to be creating this for you. Let's say you're doing an interactive collaborative piece where it's a story about you and your family, and there's 5 or 6 different people. If you guys are all going off the same sheet, then it's going to make that shooting of the film part, getting the right shots, making sure that everybody's set in the right place. It's going to make that whole process easier. And it's kind of funny because in this how to shoot a cinematic intro sequence at home, like in the middle of that little, it's like maybe a 2-minute like just little directional tutorial. But in the middle of that, I paused it because he's got a shot list, this professional guy that's creating these amazing like intro videos for Apple and iMac and all of these things. This is part of his process. I just paused it in that and like looked and was like, oh, he's writing a list of these different scenes. Let me see if I can implement that. And it's really helped me in trying to create a story. And so I'm not over creating. I'm like, I know down to the time I want to be in front of my house for 7 seconds, 8 seconds. I want to be moving towards my car for 3 seconds. Like I can tell how long it's going to take me. So if I'm in front of my house, I'm not shooting it for 2.5 minutes and having to cycle through that film later. Because like Roxanne just said, a lot of this editing stuff, it's very time consuming. So if we come in prepared, we're writing out a shot list, you can transfer this shot list into a storyboard with pictures, so you kind of get like more of the picture mind if you want to do it that way. But myself, I've always loved writing notes in school. That's helped me study in school and whatnot, is writing notes out. So I still do that when it comes to something I want to stick in my head and I want to remain and retain that knowledge. My best way is to do notes. So if you have that same type of way, maybe this process will work for you. If you're more of like a photogenic type of person that has a picture memory, then maybe a storyboard option is better for you. And we can do that by going to the internet. And we can go to this site, and it's canva.com, and I'll put that in the chat as well after this as well. But you can come in here and they got all these templates, right? So I just want to search like maybe like storyboard. We'll go storyboard. So now, like, it looks, whatever style is good for you. Let's, we got, these are just pictures, and you don't have to use these pictures, but think of this as in conversation of 2 characters. Let's say this is your dad and this is your mom. Even though they got a beard, it's all good. But you can put in these little quotes, and you can print these off or keep them in a file, and then create, you can just, right here, this little button, you can duplicate it to keep that conversation going. and keep going as long as you need to, so that you can continue to tell your story in a way that makes sense to you. So you don't have to keep going over the same type of footage, going over the same type of story, because then you can mark this stuff off as you're like, you know what? I'm happy that we got these scenes. Everybody talked and acted the way that I envisioned it in my head. Let's keep moving on. And you can move ahead confidently. So these are just a couple different things. I'll put them in the chat as soon as I stop sharing my screen, so that you guys can have a couple of these tools as well that I use for especially creating any type of film stories or promo stories, or Instagram, anything like that. You can use these storyboards to put together those really nice TikTok videos, because they do them in sections. You can go out here and plan out those sections before you tell the story to tell a more captivating and powerful story. So yeah, that's what I got. Was that helpful?
Yeah, I like that. No, that was good. Any other questions? So just to give you an example of having that structure and the direction going. So James and I could talk about creating story forever, and there's so many different topics that we could talk about, and there's so many different things that we could share with you. But before class, we message each other, and we just say, okay, these are the points that we want to make sure we hit on in class today. And then that gives us an opportunity to make sure that we get you that information. And like this open question part is mainly to make sure that, like Jonelle's question was a great question. The idea of creating our values and vision, or understanding what our values are, that we went over that very first class. I think in the future, I'm just going to encourage people to take your values and come up with a couple stories based on those. All right. And that'll be the new homework assignment. And then you'll build your story from there. And I feel like that'll make it a little bit easier, and then give you a format to utilize as well. And that was part of the in-person class that we had put together. So I apologize if that didn't translate into the digital version. I don't know why I didn't think that it would translate, but I think I can see now how it will work really easy in that process.
And just as a side note, you guys, I put in, if you go down to the bottom and you select the little chat icon, I put in the link and the reference to that YouTube video that put me onto that shot list, and how that's really, really useful for me.